they tend to be more resilient. The biofields remain strong, unlike the ones I showed you earlier that showed changes. So one of them is called the Q-link, and it contains a subtle energetic technology called sympathetic resonance technology, and another one is called the Amaskua Chi Pendant 3 quantum field technology. This Amaskua Chi Pendant is out of Asia, and the Q-link was developed in the United States. So those are a couple that boost the biofield, and that's one strategy for how some of these devices that you wonder how do they work. They may be strengthening the human energy field. I did a study some years ago on an app that unfortunately is no longer being sold. It was called the Heart Plus app, and it improved heart rate variability, and it was somehow broadcasting subtle energies through the internet or through cell phones as well. And I did this on 20 subjects, a range of ages. It showed improved autonomic nervous system balance, which means reduced stress response. And it was the first random controlled trial to show that specific frequencies broadcast over the internet can be bioactive. Wow. And in a positive way. Yeah. So this gives me great hope that there will be other inventions that may ride over the internet that will help boost our health.
If you can bring that out.
Good, I hope so.
Do you sell it? Mm-hmm.
So there are many purported protective devices for cell phones. Buyer beware, because I look at these things online and I don't see studies published in peer-reviewed journals or even research by independent scientists not connected with the company. That's too bad, because I don't believe that they have anything then. I put on my science hat when I read these things. And they're marketed then without adequate study because they want to sell something. And I'll say, where's the beef? Show me a study, or hire me to study it and to do a control trial, because I'm an independent scientist, not associated with these companies. And I've done some 6 studies using blood bioassay. We found some partial protection. We never found 100% protection. And it would be really great to have some money coming from philanthropy or foundations where I could do comparative studies. Because right now the way things get funded is that a company who develops a product, if they're going to fund a study, they only fund their product to be studied. They're not going to fund a comparative study. But it would be really great to know what works best. So I put that out there because we really need funding for that. Because we're all in this together, and I mean, it's a worldwide public health problem. We're going to need help.
By the way, Beverly, in the course of her studies, she actually found some indication that there might be a technology that almost converts the detrimental energies into beneficial energies. Because remember, electromagnetic energy is not only bad for us. There are certain electromagnetic energies that are actually good and beneficial to us. But most of our devices are unfortunately detrimental to us. But there seems to be some technology that could actually take the detrimental energy, convert it into beneficial energy. Now, that of course needs still a lot of research, but if that research would be successful, then we could say, well, why don't you telecoms hit us harder with 5G, because we feel better as long as we have our little devices here with us.
Some other things you can do, you can opt out of a smart meter, at least in this state. I'm not sure about other states. You can shield your home using special paint, but then you may as well shield your windows too using Faraday screens. You can turn off your electric power each night even, and your freezer won't melt down in the night. We should be very careful with children, and we should not let them use wireless devices because their organs are still developing, and they will have the most dire consequences on their brains and on their gonads. We should really ban Wi-Fi in the schools. And there are baby monitors with wireless sold in the US. We should go for the wired version sold in Europe.
By the way, baby monitors used to work that way. You plug them into an AC, and they would use the internal AC power lines in the house to communicate. They just piggyback onto them. whatever happened to them?
Earthing is another technology or way to go. Barefoot outdoors, walking sitting on the ground. We need to get back to Mother Earth that is rich in electrons, because we're all suffering a lack of them. When we do this, we build back that zeta potential that Harry spoke about on our cells that gets depleted. And I'm finding most middle-aged and elderly people now are very depleted. I've been looking at blood for 25 years. I've never seen worse blood than I have in recent times. Part of it is the lack of earthing, the lack of connectedness to Earth and that flow of electrons. And we're sitting indoors where there are positive ions and no negative ions either. So there are special earthing shoes you can get, earthing sheets, earthing hoods, earthing ankle bracelets, and all kinds of interesting devices out there to help you earth or ground yourself. Here's another thing, and I really do believe this. We're up against, with many things in this New World Order rollout upon us, it seems to me it's really a spiritual challenge for humanity. And if we can raise our vibration to a new higher level, we may offset some of the negative effects of all of the dire things being challenging our health, whether it's genetically modified food, the spraying of the skies, the 4G, 5G, and coming 6G, whenever that will be, and viruses, etc.
By the way, 6G is already in the works. They started already a couple of years ago. 6G is slated to be rolled out in 2030, and 6G will build onto 5G, and 6G, the key technology of 6G will be the brain network interface.
So anyway, back to the higher personal vibration. We won't think about 6G. We're struggling with 5G, but if we can maintain more frequently an enduring state of positive affect, what would that be? Love and joy and kindness. I think we can overcome a lot of this damage. Think about that like a duck in water, the water droplets rolling off that well-oiled duck feathers. So, by the way, we have a subtle energy detector. We do develop detectors, and for elements of the biofield, we can sense the dynamic emotional state of persons. We can sense positive affect. We can see the opposite as well with the detector that we developed. And we wonder whether people will be more resilient if they are in a state of positive affect more frequently. So we're hoping to bring this out as a product. And once again, we're looking for funding for further testing of this. Here is our very giant prototype of this subtle energy detector as part of a vast array of other detectors on our sensor suite at Institute for Frontier Science. And this is a subject being measured in that field, sending energy. He's an energy healer, and he's also being monitored for galvanic skin response and other things.
And by the way, that detector is completely shielded and temperature stabilized, and it's completely shielded against all conventional fields. So that means this detector should never ever see anything if all there is what we are being taught at our prestigious universities. So obviously, there is at least one more energy field that is not being shielded by copper and seems to be correlated with our consciousness. But anybody in here knows that already.
Well, I think a detector like this would be very useful in exopolitics. We could really see what are they really thinking, despite the stuff they're putting in your head. We might sense some positive affect even from another race of beings. That remains to be done, of course. So in conclusion, radiation from wireless technology poses hazards to our health, and we're all at risk here. 5G is expected to be more hazardous than 4G or 3G. It's going to be much more extensive in terms of the rollout of antennas, satellites, And 4G isn't going away, nor is 3G. They're just going to add to it. And already we have devices that are over the FCC guidelines, so I don't see much hope that anything's going to be reduced. We have to take personal action for ourselves and taking control of our own immediate environments, and maybe even saying no toward purchasing 5G technology and sticking with the older stuff, whether it's Ethernet DSL with wires or sticking with a 4G phone, because you don't want the added surveillance, etc. of 5G. And using some of the methods of protection that we outlined here. So reducing your wireless exposure using proven protective measures to improve your overall well-being. And let me end with this quote by Rudolf Steiner. By the way, he really thought electricity was like the devil. If you start reading, and he didn't write books, but his followers took his lectures and wrote them down. And let me just read you what he said here. We must be quite clear about this. In the days when there were no electric currents, when there were no electric wires buzzing in the air, it was easier to be human. In those days, those aromatic forces were not there, constantly robbing us of our body, even when we are awake. It was not necessary then for people to make such efforts in order to approach the spirit. That is why it is necessary today to muster far stronger spiritual forces merely to remain human than it was 100 years ago. And by the way, folks, this was written 100 years ago.
Amazing.
Truer now than 1920. So those are our websites, and we now turn over to Harry for demonstrating the prototype. Please hang out. You'll have to come closer to